Mr. Aaron Bear, welcome to the podcast. Such an honor for you to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this conversation. You know, I was just telling you right before we started recording, I was doing some studying on you and learning more about exponential theory and, you know, your subject matter expert in innovation and bringing innovation to companies. But there's also this big mental mindset component to being innovative. And so I'm really excited where this conversation goes. We're going to learn a ton from you and just really excited for all the value you bring.
Well, I appreciate that, and been looking forward to being on your podcast for a while. I know we've been in communication for a while, so
yeah, absolutely. So I guess let's start off with a little bit of background. I want to let the listeners understand about exponential theory, about the XMBA, about your philosophy about innovation, and why it's so different between like normal education and what, you know, we're taught to learn today. So tell us a little bit about your journey, how you got here. Tell us about XMBA. Give us a little bit of background.
Yeah, so, you know, I think I got here through a lot of failure. So, and, you know, I learned from it and I began to kind of accelerate that learning. And through that, I started to kind of look at these people that had less limiting beliefs, meaning that they just believed that they could make a bigger impact and their words were much broader. And I said, you know, I want to dig into this a little bit more. And about that time, I'd sold about a dozen companies, mostly 6 and 7 figure, 1 8 figure, really rolled all the money into the next. So everybody's like, oh God, this guy's, you know, hugely rich. But I was just that quintessential entrepreneur of rolling in the next. And I learned somewhat, but made mistakes and kind of got better and better at a formula. But I never really applied exponential theory, which is having to think a long term, like how could I think over a longer period? And I'm entering this phase in my life where I realize that I have a much longer term, that I found something that is my purpose to go help people think exponentially, and that I'll do that for the next, you know, who knows how long, 25 years, 30, 50, 100, you know, especially with the technologies that are coming into the world. And, you know, the reality of exponential thinking and the people that I kind of catalog in my book, you know, from Elon Musk to Bill Gates to Steve Jobs, you know, all these people that really created exponential companies, or the basis of exponential companies, was just their own belief that they could do that. And it candidly started with a conversation. They all started in very similar places, as any entrepreneur out there listening, or any person in any job out there listening to this podcast, is they started from a place that they just started with building a mindset, a belief, and an attitude towards themselves, and really managing their self-talk so they could actually grow that exponentially. And I think the important part that I found is there was a theme through all these people, that their box that they lived in, like, you know, my box may be as big as this room or whatever, you know. Candidly, I used to always use the example of Donald Trump before he became president, that his box was just bigger than everyone else's, that he, you know, and candidly, for him to become president, it was obviously, well, politics aside, you have to look at people, and like, he just didn't worry about the critics. He just said what he wanted. And candidly, you can think of Elon Musk in a different way, but the same way, is like, he's literally got us to believe that SpaceX is gonna go to Mars and create a settlement of, you know, like 80,000 people by 2040. That is what I call a Mars shot in the book. And I really create this term as beyond a moon shot, which is what Google says, you know, is shooting for the moon. He literally just said, you know, let's shoot for Mars. And then all of a sudden, you know, SpaceX is another, you know, unicorn, another multi-billion-dollar company that he's created, just like Tesla. So that kind of mindset has really intrigued me. I was on another podcast earlier, and we related to kind of this genius that sounds crazy, or that sounds, you know, out there. And I really touch on this in the book, but the reality of it is very few people acquire that mindset. My goal is to build an army. My own exponential goal is to create 1 million exponential thinkers through exponential theory, and through the exponential MBA, which is mindset, beliefs, and attitudes, which I went and was a business school professor for 10 years in an MBA program, and realized we were only preparing people for mediocrity, for middle management. And there used to be this monster.com commercial around middle, you know, hey, I want to grow up and be in middle management. I want to grow up and, you know, report to people I don't like. You know, the reality is we now live in a world where you can, you know, really create a craft that you love. If you're passionate about it, persistent about it, you can take that to create exponential. And that's my goal is help that with, entrepreneurs, but also help very big companies think exponentially, because there's not a company on this planet that's not being disrupted. And even the ones in my book, I talk about how they have to pivot their business models.
So one
sorry, I was a little windy there.
No, it's okay. It's all good. I think, lot there. Let's go a little deeper, because I think for me, what I'm hearing is, I love how you're trying to help entrepreneurs really think about this holistically too. It's not just about coming up with a business and, making money. It's really about solving bigger problems, serving a community. You talked about Elon, you talked about Trump, bigger boxes. Is thinking exponentially a process? Like, can I processify that? If I don't understand, like, I think a lot of people can look at those guys who are, Mars shot guys, and they are brilliant. They have, let's call it natural talent. There is some natural talent ability in, not everybody is going to be an Elon Musk. There is some natural ability, but there's also a mindset component. And can that mindset component be processified to train your mind? And what does that look like? And what does that feel like?
Yeah, I mean, in my book, Exponential Theory, and it is a theory, and the idea is that you would then move on to practice, which is really the exponential mindset, beliefs, and attitudes, which ultimately leads to mastery, which is really, I think, where you get to this genius level of being able to create an exponential idea and actually see it and follow through, because there is some particular steps. Salim Ismail wrote a book called Exponential Organizations. I'm actually have written part of his second book. But that book, he was the president and CEO of Singularity University. In there, he kind of outlines what makes up a exponential organization. And I think it creates the foundation for us to think about how do people think bigger about different aspects of their business, and how do they actually get out of the way, and that's where, I'll lean back on Elon Musk, because, he has SpaceX, he has Tesla, the Boring Company, OpenAI. He has a bunch of different companies that he's really been the thought leader on, because he's an exponential thinker, and he's really just applying exponential technologies in new ways, and then getting the right talented people. And you talk about talent wants to be part of something that's bigger than themselves. Well, candidly, when you have really talented people, they have big egos. So you have to get such a bigger thing to kind of a bigger purpose, a massive transformative purpose for them to believe in. And that's the one kind of key, if you look across all these different organizations. And in Salim Ismail's book, Exponential Organizations, he really keys into this, talking about how exponential organizations all have a massive transformative purpose. They all have something that's bigger than believable. And in my book, I kind of start off with Bill Gates.
Bigger than believable. I love that.
Yeah. Bill Gates starts off in 1976 and says, we're going to put a computer in every home. And at the time, there weren't that many computers in the workplace. Mm-hmm. So people are like, what is this crazy guy? And I mean, and here we are 40 years later, he's undershot that, where, we actually put a computer in every pocket, and every appliance, and everywhere we look, there's, things have been computerized. And that's because Bill Gates was able to see an exponential future that others weren't. And he was able to kind of participate in that. And he was able to extract from that, and he believed he would change the world, and he did. And you see that again and again with so many different entrepreneurs, even social movements.
So if I'm listening and I'm an entrepreneur, and let's say that I'm in, what I would call either a business or an industry that is legacy, okay? And let me define that a little bit, is a company that's been around maybe for 30 or 40 years doing the same thing. Maybe I'm an electrical contractor. Maybe I'm in food distribution. Maybe I'm in manufacturing or whatever. And I'm listening to you talk about Elon Musk and, Bill Gates. And there's such a huge gap between that exponential, or I don't want to say exponential, but that moonshot idea or moonshot business versus I just want to have 100 jobs in my town and have a really great electrical contracting company or what have you, right? So those are entrepreneurs also. But there's those industries and those companies often lack innovation, often lack this thinking that you're talking about, right? They're just solving a day-to-day problem. And what I love about having this conversation with you today is that during COVID, technology has disrupted industries across the platform. And so I want you to speak into that category of companies, these companies that normally, you talk about coin laundries. coin laundries is like a huge business in America, and it still continues to exist and lacks the most fundamental amount of technology and innovation and process. It's really kind of fun, right? So
Yep.
I want you to talk to that. Like, if you're in that business, I don't think we're stuck, but there's opportunity there. So what do you say to those companies and how to like really pivot around that and get into this mindset?
Yeah, not everybody has to have an exponential mindset. We need some service businesses just to be service businesses. But take coin laundry, and this is just me literally riffing.
I hope that was a good example.
Well, it's a great example because it seems like a business that'll be there. It's going to be there for a while because not everyone's going to have washers and dryers, and candidly, sometimes it's easier to take a bigger load down to the laundromat or whatever. But in that example, I would think if you start thinking exponentially, is how do you actually grow something bigger? Well, one, you only have so much limit, but what happens if you could digitize the coin laundry? What if you could actually create a subscription service? What if you could create a flat fee that I could just come anytime I wanted? Like a car wash. The car washes have already done this. Some of the biggest car washes, some of the biggest revenue producing local companies are car washes that literally have just said, sign up for, instead of, you buy a car wash today and then they have a little hook that says for $5 more, you can get unlimited washes for the month. Well, then all of a sudden they create a subscription base, and there's one here. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. There's one that has like 100,000 members. Well, 100,000 members paying, $25. Now you have a serious business. Now they have 20 different locations or whatever, and they continue to grow from that. But a coin laundry would be the same thing. What if you created a flat fee? What if it's, what if they figured out that the happy point is $10 a month, you can unlimited your laundry? Well, people don't have, like a car, you're not going to wash your car every day. So there's a point of diminishing returns. But if there's value there, all of a sudden I create a better business model. Then I would just think, hey, maybe I should get a software team to build this. And now I should put it in every coin laundry across the world. So now I just created an exponential business in the coin laundry business, just from literally starting to think exponential. And that's what helping kind of startup companies like, hey, I want to do this better, different, or less expensive. The reality is when I work with very young entrepreneurs, venture-backed and non, I literally say you got to create something that's repeatable, that's predictable, that's scalable, and your goal would be that it's sustainable. And if you do that, candidly, and if you can build the confidence in anyone, if you wanted to raise money in those areas, if you build confidence, people believe that you're going to do that, you can raise as much money as you ever wanted to do that. That's the funny thing, is like there is some straightforward path to this. It just actually leads from an exponential mindset. And that's where, I've helped create 3 accelerators. As I said, or I don't know if I said I sold 12 companies, but I failed at actually more than 12 companies.
Yeah, you talk about this a lot.
And that, that experience has led to what did I learn? And then I created a better and better process. And what I also figured out is that I was not the main guy. I don't need to be CEO, but I'm the guy that, can operationalize, but also the guy that comes into other companies. Like I work, I do a lot of consulting and really enjoy it because I have equity in really small companies that are growing, and I'm help them and their leadership team really create this exponential mindset that automatically they think bigger goals. So candidly, so think of Elon Musk. We'll come back to him again. I create a Mars shot. Even if he fails, and he basically privatized space by shuttling people back and forth from the International Space Station. He's already succeeded more than anyone in NASA ever thought was even possible when he made the statement. You could say the same for Tesla Motors. He's succeeded where his car company's market capitalization was worth more than the next 5 at one point, because of the exponential future that it has. And candidly, if all of a sudden his exponential, he flips a switch and then these all becomes autonomous cars, and they have the technologies because they're learning their algorithm, and they're basically machine learning, and they're learning how to drive the roads and all these different situations as they build that more complex, and they get to level 5 autonomy. All of a sudden my Tesla can go out in the world and literally work for me. Well, all of a sudden it becomes a different revenue stream, and Tesla becomes a different option. It becomes like the Model T. We went full circle from Ford, building these Model Ts where you can get whatever you want, just all long as it's in black. Well, Tesla has kind of the same thing. Here's 5 colors you can get. But here we are in a world that this car, when you buy it, it pays you back. Well, why wouldn't you do that? Well, instead of selling it, why not just give it to the world? And all of a sudden Tesla takes over Uber, or all all these industries are merging and colliding. And that's where you look at different exponential technologies and you play with them and you can get real creative. I've just had the fortune to take companies like Daimler, Mercedes-Benz, or Coca-Cola through these exercises. I've also helped start up one-man shops through this exercise. And believe it or not, they're able to get it's as easy to raise $5 million as to raise 500,000 because you have to go through the same due diligence. So it's probably a good idea to have a big idea. There's also the entrepreneur that just really wants to execute. Their own mindset and their own belief system is what a coach or someone needs to challenge, because their own limiting beliefs are often going to have them on a emotional roller coaster that is pulling them back, not pushing them forward.
Let's talk about that mindset part, because you talked about confidence quite a bit in that last spiff there. And I think if you have a really good idea, and what you're saying is if we can reach farther, there's it's almost like if you reach farther, you're going to achieve something, and whatever you achieved is probably way more than you ever would have thought. So set a really, really big, audacious goal. Have the confidence that is going to happen, or that you're capable of accomplishing it. And, we talked about raising capital and all this, but, entrepreneurs also believe in something that doesn't exist today. And I think that you can have confidence in the belief, but also as you are operating and you're solving problems, and you can doubt yourself. You can hit obstacles. You can be like, am I crazy? Am I really crazy? Is this ever going to really happen? What advice do you have for that entrepreneur who's maybe in a season of doubt, maybe in a season of lacking confidence in their idea, which happens?
Yeah, no. I mean, even in my book, I kind of outlined some of these great thinkers, and one story in particular from the book that I like to take about people really doubting themselves is Elon Musk. Literally 2.5, 3 years ago, before he became the $300 billion man on his way to the first trillionaire, likely, he was ready to sell. I mean, he was looking to get out of Tesla. The mounting pressure of that, his own mindset was folding, and he somehow escaped that and was to get past it. And he got into trouble with the SEC and all kinds of things. He started doing kind of a radical things, but he literally was looking for a seller. He was like, can I sell this company to someone? Another example is Google. Sergey and the two founders of Google, basically very early on, wanted to sell to Excite, which was another browser, for $1 million. They wanted to sell their search technology because they're like, there's no business model in this. We'll just, we want to sell. So they had doubts, and they wanted to complete their PhDs and go do research, and just kind of in love with, now they're doing that in like every industry in the world because they adapted this exponential. They got past those hurdles. So doubts are definitely part of it, but that's where having a coach, having someone to talk through that, having someone to literally push you to think bigger for yourself. Because the reality is it doesn't take any more energy to think bigger. It really takes less, because you get energized by changing the world. And instead of saying, I'm going to be, the best coin laundry, I'm going to stick on this little theme here. And by the end, I hope one of our listeners takes some of these ideas.
I may do it. I don't know. Be careful.
But instead of being the best coin laundry, and thinking about how we're going to have the best service, it's like, how do you think more than that? Is to say, how do I disrupt ourselves so that we can create even better service? Like we create a better experience. And, is there a concierge service that comes and goes? Is there a dry clean, is there a dry cleaning partner? Could you partner with companies to actually, there's just infinite opportunities to grow a business. And then as you digitize a business, which is part of exponential theory, there's a long period of deception where you don't realize that it's working or not working, because you're working against, basically mainstream thought, which candidly will be hard to get through. That's the other period of exponential theory that I think is important about a mindset, is it takes a longer term. In my book, I have a quote from Bill Gates that often people believe what they can do. They overthink what they can do in 1 year, but they underthink what they could do in 10. And if you look at all these great exponential entrepreneurs that have really become billionaires and really impacted our world in ways that are immeasurable, they have had a longer term view. It's just like Amazon had 19 years of negative quarters. Well, Jeff Bezos was able to reprogram analysts to say, look at the long term of what we're doing, and now is reaping those rewards as, a company that trades swap spots with Apple and others as the richest, market capitalization in the world. But nonetheless, it goes to this longer term thinking. Like in the coin laundry business, if you're going to think longer term, what are the services that will be needed in the future that aren't here today? Right. And how would I get to those? And I think there's a process of thinking through that. And exponential theory is a theory. It lays it out. The goal is, again, to get to practice about exponential mindset, beliefs, and attitudes to ultimately get to mastery. Is when you get to mastery, is that's what you're seeing of some of these different leaders. It becomes very easy for Elon Musk to use his mindset and apply it to another industry. OpenAI, Boring Company,
right.
SpaceX, solar.
You talk a lot about failure. And I really like, you had a video online that as I was researching you talk about how the cost of starting up a company goes from $500,000 back in the 90s to, or maybe it was higher, I don't remember.
5 million. Yeah.
Was it 5 million? Yeah, $5 million to start a company back in the 90s, and now it's an average of 5,000. So it's an exponential reduction in cost to start a company, which then, I guess, motivates people or incentivizes people to start up companies, but it also increases the amount of failure. And failure in entrepreneurship, I think, is a difficult thing for people to swallow. And I think it's also a mindset thing. So speak to that. Speak to why we should embrace failure. What is it about failure that really makes us operate from fear or operate from a place of like not willing to take a risk?
Yeah, and I've updated that graphic you're talking about. In 1995, it cost about $5 million to start a startup. There was lots of obstacles. Technology was really expensive. Getting online, all those things were really expensive. That came down 5 years later to about 500,000, then to 50,000, then to literally 5,000. As I said, probably when I said there, but now I believe that number is down to 500 because you can literally get into Shopify and some other things and be launched and have your product even before you build it or when you're prototyping it. So the fast customer feedback and iteration, lean, iterative, and agile has changed that dynamic. To your point, that creates hyper competition. And candidly, the only thing that would differentiate somebody is their ability to think big. And the only ideas that will survive in the future will be ones that literally make us believe that we are part of something bigger. And that's why people put Apple, on their bumper sticker, you see on cars, bumpers. Yeah. Like, hey, I'm part of Apple because it's bigger than them. It's why Harley Davidson tattoos or, all these different things. It's like, how am my brand identity attached to something bigger? To the point of failure, I think a lot about mental health. I'm part of a neuroscience company that handles PTSD and suicide, and we literally take it pretty seriously. But there's some incredible technologies coming out to really reprogram the brain and through electrical and chemical response. And part of that, is really just a belief system as well. Is when you have no options, and the only option for you is to commit suicide, or that You're dealing with so much trauma that you're in a dead end. Realize you always have other options. That phone number, that suicide line is the option that you should take if that's the case. But beyond that, there are many different ways to kind of think about your life and how you approach your life. And my ultimate goal with the XMBA is to help foster kids and other people think exponentially so they can create exponential results, then obviously solve problems for other foster kids. And the same with veterans, and the same with these different groups. And that's kind of how I spend a lot of my time at I have a foundation called Arizona Foundation. And we literally go out and we have programs. We have one called the Bridge Forum that talks about law enforcement and the Black community, and how do we bridge those where the goals are the same. We always think that we're, anchoring into these oppositions, but when you really get down to it, the goal is the same. As we want safe, healthy communities, and we want our families to prosper. But once you get past all of the verbiage that the media is putting out there, that all leads back to, how do you either win or learn, but never fail? And I think all these things, if you can approach with a mindset, part of exponential mindset to me, and what I've really instilled in all companies that I work with, is that failure is part of the process. And it's only failure if you do not learn from it. So as soon as you learn something, is to share what you've learned with other people. And candidly, to me, I always begin, I've sold 12 companies, and I look, people say successful. I failed at more than that, much, much more than that. And I've taken the long route. I'm not exactly where I want to be. I'm 47 years old. I'm not exactly where I want to be, yet I am exactly where I'm meant to be because I chose to be here. And I'm sitting in it and living in it. And it's what enabled me to write this book, because it gave me the time to sit back and say, what is exponential and how do you fail forward? How do you actually grow from that? And the only way you can do that is if you begin to learn and not make the same mistakes again. But candidly today, companies that succeed make mistakes at a faster pace than other companies.
Yes.
It's the fact that if you don't make a decision and you don't do something.
What did you learn?
And I make mistakes all the time still, but I've embraced that as just part of my life, and very costly mistakes.
The other thing I hear you say, and I really love this, and I want to make sure that the listener hears it, is like having horizon, having time. Like, I think being able to think about opportunity in business and creating impact over a longer period of time. What advice you have for people who are maybe in their early stage of entrepreneurship in their 20s or 30s and have 20, 30, 40 years of their career? Speak to them? I think we are now a very impatient generation, right? I say we as the royal we, but we, the community of Instagrammers and social media and Facebook, it has taught us for instant gratification. And if I want to build $1 billion company, I want it now. I want to be able to get a valuation now. I want to raise capital now. But you see, 99% of companies burn out and they fail and what have you. But having a long-term perspective is not enough. So talk to us about that. Like, what would you say to somebody who is kind of has that runway?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes to I use cryptocurrency as an example because that's a hot topic today. And, if you want to get rich quick, cryptocurrency isn't for you, because your duration, the people that have made all the money are the ones that have stayed in long-term. They're not the people trying to time coming in and out of the market. And that's always been the case. It's, if you look at Warren Buffett, in stocks, cryptocurrency, even NFTs, like, yeah, you may be able to get the right one or whatever, but you're gambling. And candidly, where you take the gamble and the risk out of even a business is build it so it's repeatable and predictable. And so you can start scaling it and then creating sustainability, but continuing to pivot towards where the customer wants you to pivot towards. And that's where, even this coin laundry example is like, how do we pivot towards that in the longer term? There doesn't need to be a short-term radical change, which is like what a lot of companies do. And then candidly, what happens is the employees, which are your talent and the ones that perform, they get confused. They don't even know what to do. They don't have a long-term horizon anymore. They have a short-term because you're pivoting every quarter to either analysts outside your company or to pressure outside of your company, or that you want to be a billionaire so fast. The reality is there's no billionaire that was a billionaire overnight. You could take any one of these stories that I wrote about in my book, and these people had worked long and hard about their passion. And it wasn't necessarily that, I think to your rich equation, to your podcast, what you're talking about, it wasn't that they're not money hungry people. Mm-hmm. They wanted to change the world.
Yeah. And purpose driven.
And that drove them to overcome those obstacles. So a longer term horizon becomes very simple. In fact, a good thing that helped me kind of realize this is, I remember when Mark Zuckerberg was offered $1 billion for Facebook, which I don't even know when that was. It wasn't that long ago. It's probably 10, 12 years ago, right? It was like $1 billion. Like, why would this kid want to continue on when he's literally going to be a billionaire? Why would he want to continue on? And then I realized that through venture capital and everything, he probably already had taken like $100 million out of the company, or enough money that he didn't have to worry about money. And he really was just there like, hey, I want to change the world. And it hasn't been the smoothest ride for Mark, for his time. But, what happened from there, then it's like, oh my God, now he's worth close to 100 billion, was, I guess, before the decline. But, the thing is that he had an exponential mindset. He wasn't in it for the money. He wasn't in it for these things. So a lot of people sit on the sideline and like, this guy's crazy. And then all of a sudden he buys Instagram for $1 billion, which was the best investment. At the end of the day, that now has probably a valuation that's somewhere close to what Facebook would actually be individually evaluated. So, and then he bought WhatsApp, and that's all about thinking of the long term. Is I need to figure out, now he's investing longer term in the metaverse. That's even a bigger, longer term picture.
But what I love about what you're saying too is that and we talk about this on the podcast all the time, is how do you design what you want in your life, right? How do you create and design and think about not just the doing, but also the who do I need to be, what do I want, and really focus on that, and which really does drive you to, creating the impact you want in the world, and driving from that place is much more powerful than how much money can I make, and how much wealth can I build.
Yeah, I think it comes back to habits, and at the end of the day, I often think people are very, very goal focused and they're not habit focused. So
let's talk about habits.
Okay.
Let's talk about habits. Tell us about, and I want to talk about the self-talk, and I want to talk about habits with you, because this is a really important conversation to have, and people, I get a lot of feedback about this. So, tell us about what are the conversations going on in the brain? Like when you talk about negative self-talk, tell us what those voices are saying and how we can pivot that. And tell us what behaviors and habits we should impart in our life every day to create more of this behavior that we want.
Yeah. So in this XMBA program that I've created, Exponential Mindset, Beliefs, and Attitudes, part of it is around just realizing that you are in information overload. So I'll give one of the first exercises I'll give that any one of your users could sit down and do, and they have to be present in the mindful, like, hey, I want to get to a place where I have nothing on my mind.
Yes.
And it's literally just to write down everything on your mind. The first time I ever did this, I wrote down 343 things.
Every single thing on your mind.
Everything on your mind. And once you do, you're going to feel stress come off, because you're going to be like, you were holding all that in, and your brain's like wanting to hold it in the very short-term conscious place, but it's just overwhelmed. The reality is our self-talk is a constant habitual habit of our conscious mind thinking through who we are and trying to say who we belong to and who we identify with. And I did a lot of work with Google Ideas, which is now called Jigsaw, but with a program that worked with Al-Qaeda, with gang members, skinheads, NRA bombers, really serious people that had former lives that their brain needed to be rewired and reprogrammed. And part of that is consciously, once you start realizing that your norm is not normal, then you can start to identify that this isn't me, or this isn't who I want to be. And that incongruence then starts becoming subconscious. Candidly, a lot of our subconscious behaviors come from epigenetics. We don't think how much that our history relates to us. And this goes to really some of the conversations we have around, Black history, as well as, in America, and this great sin that our forefathers, but also that as, candidly, people that were not Black, that we sat and watched this happen. So I like to lean into tough conversations, as you can see, and we've had that, but that subconscious layer needs to be either unlearned or reprogrammed. And the fact is self-help is completely broken, because there is not a person out there that is not 100% complete and enough and good enough and 100% who they need to be that they aren't right now. The only thing they may need to do is unlearn something and reprogram some things. Because in whole, if you just look at, I'm trying to think of her name, Mel Robbins had a TED Talk. We're 1 in 400 trillion chance that we're actually here right now as human beings.
Yeah.
We're all miracles beyond our wildest belief. We're all the most incredible species in the world. All of us all equal, where our DNA is exactly alike, no matter what color, shade, sexual orientation, whatever. And we all really just need to help us unlearn stuff that in the past we made that those differences were negative. This is the same as self-talk. It's the same as our own talk to ourselves as the world talks. So the mind is a
dangerous place to...
The mind, but it's connected to all their minds, and that's where energy is energy, and that's where if we let the media control negative energy, we'll create it. If we want to solve these problems, we do have to have the conversations. We have to build awareness, but we have to stop also putting labels on everything and expecting us to change anything. Because instead of saying this is a woman, she's a great woman CEO, she's just a great CEO. Yet there's a double-edged sword on that, right? It's like, how do you differentiate when everything is the same? It's the fact that you differentiate on your way that you think. And you may think on behalf of all women that I'm going to create the greatest woman entrepreneur platform there is or whatever. But it's not that you're a great woman CEO. It's that And that's the kind of, how do we get past these?
It's the nuances of that subconscious languaging, and I love
and
that.
we're not until we bring it back to conscious to say, hey, here's the program that's running me. Here's why I say that. Here's why I do this. And this goes to limiting beliefs, and it goes to the MBA part of my ex-MBA, which is not a master's in business administration. And it's intentionally said that because I was a professor for 10 years, and an MBA is not going to get you where you want to go.
Not in today's economy.
No, you need a mindset, a belief, and attitude, and you candidly don't even need education. As you know, I think Elon Musk has probably said education does not equal intelligence. And the reality is we're looking for people that can think bigger, and this is probably the key skill for the future, and we'll be attracted to it more than anything. Candidly, on this podcast, I know people are going to be attracted to this idea. I know that my belief system is something like, people want this. You want to think bigger. You want to be able to not, like, I don't see problems. I see opportunities. Like when someone comes to me in a company and then all of a sudden it's positive. Again, we frame a lot of things negatively because we have historically negatively. Now with all the abilities and platforms that we have, we should think about positively, how do we actually impact that change and actually make it happen instead of dwell upon what was happening in the past. And that's another exercise that I do, really, is helping people kind of identify as all their thoughts from the past or all their thoughts about the future. In the end, it all happens right now, and it all happens in your mind and your belief system, that you can say, I can think bigger and I can be confident to create a repeatable, predictable, scalable, sustainable. And that's a coaching model that just works. Yeah. Because once you get rid of all the crap in the past and all the things that you think will or will not happen in the future, then you lose all your regrets and your limitations from the past. And then in the future, you lose all your anxiety, stress, worries, doubt, fears. Fear is false evidence appearing real. All of a sudden you come to you, and you and I are as equal can be. You know, we may be different in weight, different in color, different in different things. Those all make us unique. But the reality is your potential is as great or greater than mine as mine is to the world. So how do I bring that out in you, and how do you bring that into me? And then you just surround yourself with those people, and you're guaranteed to have a better life. So hopefully all your listeners, if you just solve that, choose your friends wisely.
This is why I love having this podcast, because I'm so juiced. I'm like, let me ask you personally, give us all your secrets. What are your habits? What are your rituals? What helps you perform and keep your mindset and, you know, your outcomes at this highest level of performance?
Well, I think one key is when everyone has self-talk, and self-talk is generally much more negative than anyone says out loud. And when I'm in coaching with people, it's to get to have that self-talk, to have a conversation with that self-talk. And when I'm talking to myself and I hear something negative or limiting, and that's where I'm not mindful. Now I'm thinking about the past, or I'm thinking about the future. And I'm not like, wow, I have the greatest potential right now to do anything. Like how I spend my time is very, very important. Talking to you is very, very important because it amplifies my message. If I impact one person out there, I've done my job for this time. Now, if I impact 10 or 100 or 1,000 or 10,000, that's even a benefit or bonus. And that's where I realize that my own exponential potential is in sharing the message. So in my self-talk, when I'm literally having a negative talk, I say, why am I saying that? And I'm sure you've heard of the 5 whys, and I kind of dig into that. I'm like, why?
No, what are the 5 whys?
5 whys, you just ask why 5 times, and you'll actually get to the real.
Oh, right. Don't stop at the first or second why.
Yeah, don't stop at why, because you're always going to be a surface level. Let's get deep into it. And then I really say, this is like me or this is not like me. And I'm working to reprogram myself then and there. And that's part of going in the future is like, we all have our own limiting box. We all have different sizes. You know, as I've said before, some people's are huge and other people's are very, very small. And you get very, very trapped when you're in a very, very small box. And part of just being able to think exponential is to understand is there are a million things for you to do from this point, and you get to choose what those are. You have choices. When you don't appear to have choices, it's because your self-talk limited those choices. You said you couldn't do this or couldn't do that, or you wouldn't be this or whatever. Identifying that self-talk and really talking through that is, why am I saying that, and getting to the root cause. And I had a self-belief for a long period of time. And if you look at my resume, if you look at my LinkedIn, any of those out there, go link in with me. It'll look crazy because I took hundreds and hundreds of courses because I had this belief system that I was not good enough. I had this belief system that I was not enough, that I was not smart enough, that I was not good enough.
Isn't that amazing? How no matter how successful you are, how much money you make, those simple thoughts creep right in.
Simple little thought. And candidly, I knew it and I kept letting it play to me. So it's not that you overcome. It's not that these things are that easy to unlearn.
Right.
And that's what I want to understand is there's learning and there's unlearning. But unlearning may be the most valuable thing because somewhere along the way, our box was created by other people putting limitations on us.
Yep. I love it. What are you most afraid of?
I don't, candidly right now, I don't have fear. And and I don't say that lightly because I really say that because I've adapted to this false evidence appearing real. And, I think if there's one thing, death, and it's not leaving a legacy. It's not getting to do what I want to do, not sharing this message. And, the more and more I can talk to people about this, because since I wrote this book, Exponential Theory, my life has changed dramatically because it just has thrown me into a world of other exponential thinkers, which then all of a sudden I can think bigger. And I've been somewhat isolated. And I will tell anyone out there is go find a bunch of mentors, find coaches, understand nobody does it alone. There's not one person that's a genius by themselves. They've done it through learning from other people, read lots of books. But in the end, my fear is not being able to fulfill my potential and my legacy because I now truly believe where I sit, I can impact the world with my belief system because I believe that, if that makes, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
Everything we do, and in my book and in Exponential Mindset and Belief, everything we do is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So often we say, hey, I want that red Range Rover. And then we say, I don't have to have it. I could.
Boom, it's over.
It's over. I want this. And that's material. And but material is what people can understand. But the reality of that, and I've, been successful enough to be able to afford just about anything from, big houses to any kind of car I wanted or whatever. None of that brings happiness. That brings instant gratification. And that's where our world, and I'll go bring this kind of back to kind of mental health and some of the self-talk is compare culture and cancel culture and all these things that now exist that did not exist. The fact that we spend hours of our day looking at someone else's lives and comparing ourselves is detrimental to our own belief system. You out there, you being anyone out there listening to this, really just needs to understand is you need to become the best you. And Aristotle said the meaning of life was to become the best you, to find excellence in you. And that goes back, 1,500, 2,000 years ago. And it hasn't changed. At the end of the day, as complex as the world is, what is the best you? What is your potential? So to your question is like my potential, I have focused on a massive transformative potential to create a million exponential thinkers to really change the world. And that's even uncomfortable for me to say. Like I even started to say 1,000. That's a slip. A million exponential entrepreneurs, million exponential thinkers. Like I want to change the world. And so that is my sole focus and that my longer term objective. I know I'm not going to do that today. I'm not going to do it on this podcast, but in 10 years, I truly have the potential to be able to do that. And that's where hopefully all of you track me down and follow me so that you see this journey and I will do that.
It's really an important message and I really encourage people to reach out to you and read the book. And I need to buy the book as well, but we talk about thoughts to things, right? Thoughts into things. And somebody keeps in my life has been telling me this a lot is like, there's a common phrase that says, I believe it when I'll see it. But it's actually the opposite is that you'll see it when you believe it. And we're often trained to look for evidence, but if we can train ourselves to believe, then the evidence will show up. And, there's a lot of like manifesting and
it all starts.
It all starts in these 6 inches right here.
Nothing exists with what the human, and that's what makes humans so unique compared to the animal kingdom is we have been able to, we have space stations and, that all started from honestly a movie in the, 1950s by Isaac Asimov. I mean, it was like nobody thought that was possible, and now we're going to go to Mars and
it's pretty amazing. We're living in a pretty amazing time.
But it all started with imagination. And the reality is my first book was called Reimagine Innovation because I really think, and that book was actually rewritten into Exponential Theory. So there's some key terms inside my book about reimagining, because we need to reimagine ourselves, and we need to do that every day, because every day is day one, as in,
yes,
Jeff Bezos, Amazon culture. It's like, it's day one because day two leads to entropy, leads to death.
Yes.
And that's the truth. I'm growing beyond belief, because I'm in this cycle of just growth, from writing a book, from people I'm meeting. It's incredible. And I'm so alive, and I have so many options and so many choices. And I think that's what's exciting. I got to learn to say no, but
don't we all? Tell me,
goal, my purpose.
As we wrap up, I want to ask you one final question, and then I want people to hear how we can get a hold of you and reach out to you, and where to get the book, etc. For you, what does it mean to live a rich life?
A rich life. I think it's one that impacts a billion people. And I say that if I create 1 million exponential entrepreneurs, they'll impact 1 billion people. It'll easily bypass 1 billion people. That impact in a positive way, creating this mindset in a million people, will be a rich life. Whether that brings me fortune or not, I do not care.
Yeah.
And I'm confident that I'll reap the rewards of making such an impact, just as a lot of people have, thinking this big. Yet, candidly, I'm going to do the exact same thing every day. Yeah. And that's a rich life, is that I get up every morning, I have the same habits and routines. I really work on them. I really work, how do I improve those? And, in the book, I talk about Navy SEALs. They have 1% improvement every day. They get 37x improvement in a year.
Yes.
I do that every day, and I really work to measure, and it's not about output, it's about impact. And I think a lot of people just think doing stuff matters. It's like doing stuff that matters. It's not doing, it's a slight twist in the translation. And then that's why this matters. Like I said, if one person gets it, or 10 or 100, then I've spent my time so wisely today with you.
Well, look, I really appreciate your time here and honor you for the work you're doing. Just inspiring me. I really am going to my takeaway today is to unload my brain on every single thing that's going on in my mind. I feel like that's speaking to me right now, and will really help me clear my thoughts. So I really appreciate that. I've done that before, but not 350 things, which means I'm leaving it to 30 or 40 things. So I guess
don't leave it out there that you just hang and do that. Then what you want to do is figure out, and I'll give you the second part of this equation, because I don't want to leave you incomplete or your audience incomplete. The second part of that is, then what is actually going to get you to your purpose? And then schedule that into the next 6 weeks. And you'll get it all done in the next 6 weeks.
I believe it, because it's driven by purpose.
The rest of it, put on a list that just say everything list, and then literally just put on a list that say you're not doing now. And believe it or not, some of that stuff will be, I have one that 343 is literally down to 15.
Right.
That I've not done. And that's where I've traveled to 90 countries and all the 50 states. And in serendipitously, it's not like I planned to hey, I'm going to go do this.
It just works itself out. So Aaron, how do people find out, learn from you, or connect with you? How do they reach out?
Yeah, you can email me at aaronbear, which is AARONBARE at aaronbear.com. My website's aaronbear.com. On Instagram, Aaron Bear. On Twitter, Aaron Bear. On Facebook, Aaron Bear. I think you get the point.
Yep.
I own my name because I was an early...
And we'll put all the links in the bio too. But
then you can learn about Exponential Theory and XMBA on those sites, but you can find them through my different social media. But I do always leave with this is, feel free to reach out to me. I very much am responsive. 99% of you will not reach out to me, and 99% of you will actually not take much from this if you don't reach out to me. So
love that. Well, I appreciate your time, brother, and thank you so much, and best of luck. Let's do it. 1 million entrepreneurs.
All right,
man. Thanks so much.
Thank you.